Rain came down in silver needles against the glass wall of the Amber Room, a high-rise restaurant that pretended the clouds were its ceiling. City lights shimmered below like fallen stars. Staff whispered in polished shoes. Forks chimed like distant bells. And at a corner table, draped in linen white as innocence, Ethan Cole straightened his tie, his pulse drumming louder than the storm. He wasn't nervous because of the business dinner. He was nervous because of her. A woman with scarlet lips and a smile like a dare slid her hand over his. "Relax," she murmured. "Investors love confidence." He swallowed, knowing confidence was the one thing he didn't have left to give. Not since he'd begun living a double life. Before the story unfolds deeper, I want to know something from you. Where are you listening from tonight? What city, what country, what tiny corner of the world? It amazes me that a single story can travel farther than truth sometimes does. The woman's name was Mara, and she wore her ambition like perfume. Thick, sweet, and impossible to avoid. Ethan had met her 3 months earlier. At a networking mixer he should never have attended alone. Back then, he told himself things were complicated at home. That Lily was distant, distracted, too wrapped in her own career as a non-profit counselor to notice how badly he needed attention. But if he was honest, the distance hadn't come from Lily. It had come from him. Now, they sat together waiting for the new investor he'd promised his team. Waiting for the person who, on paper, might save his failing startup from collapse. And waiting, in secret, for a moment Mara believed was theirs to share. "Do you think she'll show?" Mara asked, idly stirring her wine. "She will," Ethan replied, though his voice lacked certainty. A drop of rain rolled down the window, tracing a path that reminded him of guilt, slow, inevitable, impossible to wipe away without leaving streaks. At the same time, somewhere across the city, Lily Cole stood in front of a mirror, smoothing the navy dress she had chosen carefully. She had spent the afternoon preparing, hair pinned, lipstick soft, eyes clear, though she hadn't needed to. Lily could have walked into any room exactly as she was and lit it from inside. But tonight wasn't any room. Tonight, she expected to meet the founder whose pitch deck had landed on her desk 2 months earlier, the one she believed deserved a second chance. Her consulting firm was known for being selective, almost ruthless. But something about Cole Innovations had made her pause. The numbers weren't impressive. The strategy was scattered. But the heart, the mission to build affordable tech for schools, felt real. She told her assistant she wanted to meet the founder personally. A gut decision, a hopeful one, a choice that would bend the evening like a branch caught in wind. Lily slipped into her coat and stepped out into the storm. Unaware, she was walking toward a truth that would tremble the ground beneath both their lives. Inside the restaurant, Ethan's guilt manifested in small ways. Avoiding eye contact with Mara, fidgeting with the cuff of his shirt, glancing at the door like a man afraid of who might walk through it. He wasn't afraid of losing the contract. He was afraid of being seen, in a way he couldn't lie himself out of. "What's wrong with you tonight?" Mara teased. He forced a smile. "Just business." She leaned closer. "After tonight, you won't need to worry about anything." Imagine it. Funding secured, us celebrating. The word "us" rang like a bell he couldn't bear to hear. He didn't answer, not because he didn't know what he wanted, but because he knew exactly what he should never have wanted in the first place. Every minute dragged, like an apology waiting to be spoken. And outside, Lily arrived at the building, checked the name of the restaurant, and stepped into the elevator. Calm, focused, unaware, she was walking into a scene that would slice her open before it could stitch her back together. If you stood beside Ethan just then, what would you have told him? Be brutally honest, and write your answer below. And if words feel too heavy, tap like to say compassion still matters, even when people break it. The elevator doors opened with a soft sigh. Rainwater clung to Lily's coat as she walked to the host's stand, introduced herself, and was led across the glowing marble floor. Every footstep carried trust, belief, love that hadn't yet been betrayed, but soon would be. And at the table, Ethan turned at the sound of heels approaching. His heart stopped. Mara smiled, expecting the investor. And Lily, his wife, his once unshakable anchor, stepped into view, seconds away from seeing everything she never deserved to witness. Lily froze first, not in shock theatrical or dramatic disbelief, but the tiny human pause when the brain tries to rearrange reality into something safer. Her eyes moved. Ethan's blazer, his familiar wristwatch, the hand Mara still lazily rested on his arm. A fraction of a second. A lifetime. Lily. Ethan's voice cracked, as if something inside him snapped with it. Mara blinked, lips parting in slow confusion. You know her. The world tilted. Lily didn't speak. She merely looked at Ethan, and suddenly every mile she had traveled across the city, every moment spent dressing, believing, hoping, collapsed into a hollow ache behind her ribs. The maitre d' politely stepped away, sensing the kind of storm even waitstaff can't shield from. Ethan stood abruptly. The chair legs scraped loud enough to turn heads. Lily, I can explain, he stammered. Her hands trembled, not visibly, but in the way she pressed her fingers into her palm, grounding herself before her knees could give out. You don't need to, she said softly. It seems very clear. The softness hurt more than shouting ever could. Mara's eyes widened. A flush rose under her perfect makeup. Not shame, just irritation at complication. You're married? She hissed under her breath. Ethan's silence was answer enough. Lily took a slow breath. The moment demanded dignity she did not owe them, yet she summoned it anyway. I'm the investor you're meeting tonight, she said, turning to Mara with a calm that hollowed Ethan out. Lily Coleman. Strategic capital. The air vanished from the table. Mara dropped her gaze. A small, incredulous laugh slipped from her lips, the kind people make when their confidence splinters. Ethan opened and closed his mouth like someone drowning inches from shore. A waiter arrived at the worst possible second with menus. Can I? No, Lily's voice remained steady. I think this meeting is canceled. She turned as if to leave, but Ethan reached out, slow, careful, like she had become something delicate, something breakable. Lily, wait. Please. The desperation in his voice made a couple at a nearby table glance over. She paused, not mercifully, but because she had one more thing to say. I believed in you, she whispered, in this company, in who you were. Then silence, heavy, suffocating. With every step she took toward the exit, Ethan's chest tightened. It wasn't the deal he worried about losing. It was the person who had seen him at his very worst and still chosen him until tonight. A rain-soaked breeze met Lily as she left. The city swallowed her under its shimmering lights. Inside, Mara folded her arms. Well, that was messy. Ethan sank into his chair. You have no idea. Actually, she said coldly, I think I do. And for the record, you should have told me. He laughed bitterly, as if that would have stopped you. Mara scoffed, standing. I'm ambitious, Ethan, not cruel. I don't poach husbands. She grabbed her purse, heels clicking like a gavel, striking down a verdict. Good luck saving your company now. Then she was gone. Ethan sat alone, surrounded by the hum of conversations he couldn't hear. Thunder rolled overhead, and for the first time in months, he felt the full weight of what he'd done. Not just the affair, but the slow erosion of trust, the tiny lies that piled into avalanches. He buried his face in his hands. Somewhere across the city, Lily stepped into a taxi, tears threatening but refusing to fall. She wouldn't cry in a stranger's car. She stared out the rain-streaked window, her reflection ghost-like against the glass. She replayed moments she wished she could unknow. Ethan smiling at Mara, his hand beneath hers. How easy it all looked. The driver glanced back. Rough night. Lily forced a breath. Something like that. The rain blurred the skyline into watercolor. When the cab stopped outside their home, she hesitated before paying, as if the sky might open and erase the evening entirely. But nothing cleanses betrayal in one storm. Inside the house, everything was painfully familiar. Framed photos, shared mugs, the sweater Ethan left on the couch last week. Ordinary objects suddenly became proof of a life she thought she understood. She set her purse down, removed her shoes, and sank onto the couch. The dark pressed close. And only then, when no eyes could witness her breaking? Did her breath hitch, shudder, unravel? Have you ever felt blindsided by someone you trusted completely, when the ground beneath you shifted so fast you couldn't catch yourself? Right? Yes. If you've lived through that kind of moment. And if you want, tell me what you learned from surviving it. Back at the restaurant, Ethan finally stood, tossed bills on the table without counting them, and stumbled out into the storm. The rain drenched him in seconds, plastering his hair to his forehead, washing away the warmth the restaurant had offered. But it couldn't wash away regret. He didn't go back to the office or to Mara. His feet carried him home automatically, as if whatever compass guided him had only one direction left to point, toward the mess he had made. Every block felt like a confession. By the time he reached their door, he wasn't shivering from the cold anymore. He was shaking from fear. Fear that opening it would mean facing a silence he could never come back from. He unlocked it slowly. Inside, the house was dark, except for a lamp glowing softly in the living room. Lily sat upright, tears dried on her cheeks, looking at the door before he even stepped fully inside. For a long moment, neither spoke. Ethan shut the door behind him. The click sounded like fate settling into place. "I'm sorry," he whispered, because there was nothing else to begin with. Lily swallowed, eyes red but steady. "You should be." Her voice didn't rise, didn't tremble. It simply lived in truth. That hurt more than fury ever could. Ethan took a step toward her, but she lifted a hand, gentle, final. "Don't." He froze, water dripping onto the hardwood floor. And the silence, thick with everything they had not said for months, stretched between them like a bridge that might never be rebuilt. The lamp hummed softly, its warm circle of light exposing everything Lily had been trying not to feel. Ethan stood near the door, rainwater pooling beneath his shoes, the scent of cold asphalt clinging to him. He looked smaller somehow, like the man she married had been peeled away, leaving only someone unfinished. "You can sleep in the guest room," Lily said at last. Her words were calm, practical. That scared him more than anger. "Lily, please," Ethan said. "Just let me explain. I owe you that much." She finally looked up at him then, not with fury, not even with pain, but with exhaustion, the kind that comes after holding a breaking wall together with bare hands. "You owe me honesty," she replied, "and I don't think you're ready to give that yet." The truth landed between them, heavy and undeniable. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it again. He nodded once, stiffly, like a man accepting a sentence he couldn't appeal. He walked down the hallway, every step echoing with memories. Laughter through walls, whispered plans, 1,000 ordinary nights that had built something he'd taken for granted. The guest room door clicked shut behind him. Lily remained on the couch long after, staring at nothing. Her phone buzzed once, an email notification from her assistant, probably following up about the canceled dinner. She didn't open it. Instead, she reached for a framed photo on the shelf. It showed her and Ethan 3 years earlier, paint on their clothes, smiling wildly in the half-renovated house they'd bought with more hope than money. Back when love felt indestructible. Her throat tightened. She set the frame face down. The next morning arrived quietly, cruel in its normalcy. Sunlight slipped through the blinds like nothing had happened. Birds argued in the trees. The world continued. Lily moved through the kitchen mechanically, making coffee she didn't drink. When Ethan entered, freshly showered, hair still damp, she felt the air change. "Morning," he said softly. She nodded once, not trusting her voice. They stood on opposite sides of the counter, an invisible line dividing the room, and maybe their lives. "I called the board," Ethan said. "Told them the investor meeting didn't go through." Lily's jaw tightened. And they want answers. "I didn't give details." She met his gaze. "You never do." The words weren't sharp. They were honest. They made them cut deeper. "I ended it," Ethan blurted. "With Mara. Completely." Something flickered in Lily's eyes. Not hope, not relief. Just a question she hadn't asked yet. "Why?" she said. He hesitated. "Too long." "Because I almost lost you," he answered finally. Lily exhaled slowly. "That's not the same as choosing me." Ethan flinched. She turned away, poured the untouched coffee down the sink. I need space, she said. Time. And you need to figure out why you were willing to risk everything before you even thought about consequences. I'm thinking about them, he said. Every second. Good, she replied quietly. Sit with that. They lived like polite strangers for days. Ethan threw himself into work, trying to salvage the company, now dangling by a thread. Investors withdrew. Emails went unanswered. The staff sensed instability like animals before a storm. Meanwhile, Lily took leave from her firm. She spent long hours walking the city, sitting in parks, replaying conversations, noticing signs she'd ignored. The late nights, the defensiveness, the way he'd stopped asking about her day. Pain came in waves. Some hit suddenly. Others crept in slow and suffocating. One afternoon, Lily found herself at a community center she volunteered at occasionally. Children laughed in a nearby room. The sound grounded her. Grace, a fellow counselor, noticed her distraction. You okay? She asked gently. Lily hesitated, then nodded. I will be. Grace smiled knowingly. That's usually how it starts. Have you ever had someone show up for you when you felt completely lost? If yes, write yes. And if you can, share their name. Sometimes gratitude deserves to be spoken aloud. That evening, Ethan sat alone in his office long after everyone else had gone. The city outside his window glowed, indifferent. His inbox stared back at him. Subject lines filled with doubt, concern, disappointment. He opened a folder on his desktop labeled Original Vision. Inside were early sketches, notes scribbled late at night, emails Lily had once helped him edit, before the company became about survival instead of purpose. A lump formed in his throat. He realized then that the affair hadn't started with desire. It had started with avoidance, with choosing the easy validation over the hard work of repair, with running from conversations that required humility. For the first time, he didn't reach for excuses. He reached for responsibility. That night, he knocked softly on the guest room door. Lily, he said through the wood, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to let me try to become someone worth forgiving. Silence stretched. Then, quietly, that's going to take time. I know, he said. I'm not going anywhere. She opened the door just enough to look at him. Their eyes met. Not healed, not hopeful, but honest. That's a start, she said. The door closed again, but this time it didn't feel like an ending. And somewhere between regret and resolve, something fragile stirred. Uncertain, but alive. Time didn't heal anything right away. It only made space for truth to surface. Days turned into weeks. The house learned a new rhythm. Quiet mornings, separate routines, conversations measured and careful. Ethan respected the distance Lily asked for, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. He cooked his own meals, did his own laundry, left notes only when necessary. No grand gestures, no pressure, just presence. Lily noticed. Not immediately, but in the way you notice the sky after a storm has passed. You don't trust it yet, but you feel the air change. Ethan started therapy on his own. He didn't announce it. Lily found the pamphlet by accident, tucked into his bag. He didn't use it as proof. He didn't ask for credit. He just went every Thursday evening, coming back quieter, more thoughtful, like someone peeling layers instead of hiding beneath them. At the company, things unraveled fast. Cole Innovations lost 2 major clients. Payroll became a weekly panic. Employees whispered in corners. Eyes full of questions Ethan didn't have answers for. The board scheduled an emergency meeting. Michael, his co-founder, didn't bother with small talk. You're bleeding trust, he said bluntly. From investors, from the team, from everyone. I know, Ethan replied. And Lily? Michael asked carefully. Ethan looked down. I broke her. Michael sighed. Then, maybe fixing that is where you start. That night, Ethan came home with a box of old files. He spread them across the dining table. Notes, proposals, community impact reports. Lily paused in the hallway, watching him. What's this? She asked. He didn't look up. Everything I forgot why I started. She crossed her arms. And I'm stepping down as CEO. The words landed heavy. What? Lily said. I'll stay on and help transition, he continued. But someone else should lead. Someone who still believes in the mission without all this damage attached. She studied him. You're giving up your company? I'm choosing integrity, he said quietly. For once. That night, Lily lay awake longer than usual. It wasn't forgiveness she felt, but something loosening. A knot easing just enough to let air in. Weeks later, Lily returned to work. Her firm buzzed with activity. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, ambition humming through glass walls. She walked into a meeting and froze when she saw the name on the agenda. Cole Innovations, restructuring proposal. Her assistant noticed her pause. We can reassign it if you want. Lily shook her head slowly. No, I'll handle it. That evening, Lily sat across from Ethan again, but this time in a conference room. Neutral ground. Professional lighting. No memories hanging on the walls. This isn't personal, she said, reviewing the documents. Understand, Ethan replied. But it was personal. Every line carried history. Every number reflected choices made and unmade. She laid out conditions clearly. Transparency, new leadership, accountability measures, community oversight. It was firm, fair, unforgiving of shortcuts. Ethan accepted all of it. At the end of the meeting, Lily closed the folder. This is the only reason I'm moving forward, she said. Because the work matters. Not because of us. He nodded. I wouldn't expect anything else. As they stood to leave, she paused. But understand this. Redemption doesn't come from deals or sacrifice alone. It comes from consistency. I know, he said. And for once, it wasn't a promise. It was an understanding. One afternoon, Lily volunteered at the community center again. She helped a teenage girl named Ava fill out college applications. Watch her confidence bloom sentence by sentence. Why do you do this? Ava asked. Lily smiled softly. Because someone once did it for me. The answer surprised her with its truth. Later that night, she shared the story with Ethan, casually, over dinner. He listened without interrupting, like every word mattered. You're good at that, he said. Seeing people. She looked at him. I forgot that you used to see me. He swallowed. I'm trying to learn again. Now it's your turn. Share one small act of kindness you've done recently. Something real, something quiet. Write it below, so others remember that goodness still exists. Your story might light someone's way tonight. The turning point didn't come with fireworks. It came on an ordinary Tuesday. Ethan returned home early to find Lily sitting on the floor, surrounded by old photo albums. She looked up, startled, then relaxed. I'm sorting, she said, deciding what stays. He sat down across from her, careful not to cross invisible lines. They flipped pages together, vacations, holidays, handwritten notes tucked between photographs. Some moments made them smile. Others brought silence. Lily closed one album and set it aside. I don't know what the ending looks like, she said. I'm not asking for one, Ethan replied. Just the chance to keep showing up. She nodded slowly. Then keep doing that. Outside, evening settled gently over the house. No thunder, no rain, just a quiet sky, waiting. And in that stillness, something began to rebuild. Not because the past was forgotten, but because it was finally being faced. The house no longer felt like a battlefield, but it wasn't a sanctuary either. It was something in between, unfinished, cautious, learning how to breathe again. Ethan kept showing up. Not loudly, not desperately, just steadily. He woke early to run, clearing his head before the day could tangle it again. He cooked dinner twice a week without asking if Lily would join him, leaving the plate warm, covered, respectful of her choice. When she spoke, he listened like the words might vanish if he blinked too long. Lily noticed the absence of pressure most of all. No pleading, no remember when, no attempts to rush her grief toward his comfort. That restraint did more than apologies ever could. One evening, Lily came home exhausted. She dropped her bag by the door and sat on the stairs, shoulders slumped. Ethan was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. He heard the quiet, the kind that signals a bad day. He turned off the stove, sat 2 steps below her. Didn't touch. Want to talk, he asked. She shook her head, then paused. Actually, yes. He waited. I met with a couple today, she said. Married 10 years. Infidelity. They kept asking me how to go back to what they were. Her voice cracked, not loudly but enough. And what did you tell them? Ethan asked. That there is no going back, she replied. only deciding whether to build something new. He nodded slowly. That sounds right. She looked at him. It scares me. It should, he said. But I'm not afraid of the work anymore. She studied his face, searching for performance, for cracks. Found none. Only humility, unpolished and real. That night, Lily slept for the first time, without waking from dreams she couldn't name. At Cole Innovations, the restructuring took hold. A new CEO stepped in, competent, ethical, clear-eyed. Ethan worked under her direction without resistance. He apologized to the team openly, without defensiveness. Some accepted it. Others didn't. He didn't argue. Trust, he learned, isn't reclaimed. It's re-earned, slowly, unevenly, without guarantees. One afternoon, Michael pulled him aside. You're different, he said. Ethan shrugged. I had to become someone I could live with. Michael nodded. Funny thing, people noticed that. Ethan wasn't sure redemption worked that way. But he kept going anyway. The real test came unexpectedly. Lily received an invitation to speak at a regional conference on ethical leadership and personal integrity. The irony wasn't lost on her. She almost declined. Almost. Instead, she stood on stage beneath soft lights, the audience quiet and attentive. She spoke without notes. Integrity, she said, isn't about perfection. It's about what we do when we fail, whether we face the harm we've caused or hide behind our fear. Her hands trembled slightly. She didn't stop. Sometimes, the hardest part isn't forgiving others. It's deciding whether we allow ourselves to hope again. In the audience, Ethan sat near the back, unannounced, unseen. He didn't clap the loudest. He just listened, heart open, chest tight. Afterward, Lily found him in the lobby. You didn't tell me you were coming, she said. I didn't want to influence anything, he replied. She nodded. Thank you. It was a small moment, but it mattered. That night, they walked the neighborhood together for the first time since the dinner. Streetlights cast long shadows. The air smelled like cut grass and distant rain. Their steps fell into an old rhythm, familiar but not assumed. I still get angry, Lily said suddenly. Out of nowhere. I know, Ethan said. And sometimes I don't miss you at all. Other times it feels like I lost my home. I know, he said again. She stopped walking. He stopped too. I don't know what forgiveness looks like yet, she said. But I know what honesty does. He met her gaze. Then I'll keep choosing that. She studied him, searching for the man who once made everything feel safe, and seeing, perhaps, someone trying to become that again. She reached out, not to his hand, to his sleeve. A gentle hold, brief, real. If that moment reached you, if you felt that quiet ache and hope collide, leave a red heart. Some moments don't need words. They just need to be felt. The following weeks were marked by tiny milestones. Shared coffee, laughter at something small, a movie watched on opposite ends of the couch, until they weren't so far apart anymore. One evening, Lily asked, do you ever think about why you didn't stop sooner? Ethan didn't deflect, because stopping meant admitting I was unhappy and responsible. It was easier to escape than to confront myself. She nodded. That honesty matters. He hesitated. Do you think you could ever trust me again? She didn't answer right away. I think trust, she said carefully, is rebuilt the same way it's broken. In moments. Over time. With consistency. That's fair, he said. She stood, gathering the empty mugs. As she passed him, she paused. Ask me again someday, she said. Hope didn't explode. It breathed. And sometimes that was stronger. The question lingered between them for days after Lily spoke it. Ask me again someday. Ethan didn't. Not because he forgot, but because he understood what that sentence really meant. It wasn't permission. It was possibility. And possibility, he'd learned, could be crushed by impatience. Life continued in quiet increments. They attended separate events, lived parallel days that sometimes brushed against each other like passing trains. Lily reclaimed pieces of herself. Morning yoga, long talks with Grace, evenings lost in books instead of worry. Ethan kept doing the unglamorous work of change. Therapy, accountability meetings, uncomfortable self-reflection that stripped him of excuses. Then came a call. It was late afternoon when Ethan's phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. He almost let it go to voicemail. until he heard the urgency in the silence before it stopped. "Mr. Cole," the voice said when he answered. "This is St. Matthew's Hospital. Your wife has been brought in." The word wife hit him harder than the news that followed. Lily had collapsed during a session at the community center. Dehydration, exhaustion, emotional overload. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to shake the ground beneath them both. Ethan arrived at the hospital breathless, heart-hammering, guilt-riding shotgun. The antiseptic smell burned his nose as he paced the waiting area like a penitent. When the doctor finally allowed him in, Lily lay propped against white pillows taped to her arm. She looked small, too small. "You didn't have to come so fast," she murmured. "Yes," he said quietly. "I did." He sat beside her bed, careful, respectful. Didn't touch her hand, just stayed. "I thought I was stronger than this," she whispered. "You are," he replied. "Strong people still fall. They just get back up differently." Her eyes filled, not with despair but release. She stayed overnight for observation. Ethan didn't leave. He slept upright in a chair, jacket folded under his head, waking at every sound. For the first time in months, Lily watched him without the lens of betrayal, just as a man choosing to stay when no one asked him to. In the early morning, as pale light crept through the blinds, Lily spoke. "I was so busy being functional," she said softly, "that I forgot to be human." Ethan swallowed. "I forgot that a long time ago." She turned her head to look at him. "And now I'm learning," he said, slowly. Honestly, she studied his face, tired, unguarded, real. When Lily was discharged, Ethan drove her home in silence that felt different from before. Not heavy, not sharp, just present. At the house, she paused at the doorway. "I don't want to be alone tonight," she said. The words were simple. Their meaning wasn't. "I'll sleep on the couch," Ethan said immediately. She shook her head. "That's not what I meant." They stood there, suspended in a moment that asked more than comfort. It asked courage. That night they shared the bed, not as lovers, not as strangers, as two people who had survived the same earthquake and were still counting the damage. No promises were made, no wounds erased. But when Lily reached for his hand in the dark, Ethan felt something crack open. Not entitlement, not relief. Gratitude. The following days deepened everything. Not dramatically, subtly. Hard conversations surfaced about loneliness, resentment, unmet needs. Lily spoke of how invisible she'd felt. Ethan spoke of shame he'd buried under charm and success. Sometimes it hurt too much, and they paused. Sometimes they laughed at the absurdity of it all. How love could be both fragile and stubborn. One evening, Lily asked the question she'd been circling for weeks. "Do you love me?" she said. "Or do you just hate who you were without me?" Ethan didn't answer quickly. "I love you," he said at last. "And I hate who I was when I forgot how to love properly." Tears slid down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. Outside, rain tapped gently against the windows. Nothing like the storm that had started all this. Softer, cleansing. A letter arrived the next morning. From Mara. Ethan read it once, then again, then handed it to Lily without comment. It was short, direct, apologetic. Mara admitted she hadn't known about Lily at first, and when she did, she'd chosen not to ask questions. She wished Lily peace. Nothing more. Lily folded the letter carefully. "Do you want to respond?" Ethan asked. She shook her head. "No, that chapter's already ended." He nodded. "No arguments. No relief-seeking. Just acceptance. Be honest with yourself for a moment. After everything you've seen, everything you've felt, could you forgive someone who broke your trust this deeply? Type forgive if you think you could, or never if the wound would be too much to carry. The real climax didn't come with confrontation. It came with choice. Lily stood one evening in front of the mirror, looking at her reflection. Not the woman who had been betrayed, but the woman who had endured. Ethan waited in the living room, heart in his throat, not knowing what direction her next step would take. She joined him quietly. "I've made a decision," she said. He stood slowly. "Whatever it is, I'll respect it." She nodded, appreciating that. "I'm not ready to forget," she said. "And I may never be. I understand. But I am ready," she continued, voice steady, "to forgive. Not because what you did was small, but because I refused to let it define the rest of my life. Ethan's breath hitched. He didn't speak. She stepped closer. This doesn't erase consequences. It doesn't guarantee us. It just opens the door. Tears blurred his vision. He nodded once. Thank you. She shook her head gently. This isn't for you. It's for me. And in that moment, forgiveness stopped being a gift. It became an act of power. Forgiveness didn't arrive like sunrise. It arrived like dusk, slow, uncertain, stitched together from fading light and long shadows. After Lily spoke her decision, nothing magically reset. There was no rush of joy, no cinematic embrace that erased the months of damage. What followed was quieter than that, more fragile, more real. They began again, not as they were, but as they were now. Ethan moved with care, as if the ground beneath them was newly poured concrete. He knew one careless step could crack it. Lily noticed how he asked instead of assumed, how he checked in when conversations grew heavy, how he accepted her silences without trying to fill them. Trust rebuilt itself in moments so small they almost went unnoticed. A text when he'd be late, a truth spoken even when it didn't help his case, an apology offered without defending the past. Lily watched all of it, not with suspicion, but with discernment. Forgiveness had sharpened her vision, not softened it. One Saturday morning, she found Ethan in the garage, sorting through boxes labeled old stuff. His sleeves were rolled up. Dust streaked his hands. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Letting go," he said simply, "of the things I hid behind." She stepped closer. Inside one box were awards, old press clippings, photos of Ethan at panels, smiling too wide, eyes tired. "I kept thinking success would make me enough," he said. "Turns out it just made me loud." She touched one of the frames. "You don't have to erase who you were." "I know," he said. "I just don't want to worship him anymore." That afternoon, they donated most of it, keeping only what felt honest. The rest went quietly, without ceremony. The real test of hope came from the outside. Coal innovations under new leadership began to stabilize. Schools reported improved access. Teachers sent handwritten notes of thanks. Ethan read them one night at the kitchen table, tears slipping down his cheeks. "These were the people I forgot," he said. Lily sat beside him. "And now I remember why it mattered." She leaned her head against his shoulder, tentatively at first, then with certainty. It wasn't passion. It was alignment. A few weeks later, Lily invited Ethan to the community center, not as a favor, but as an invitation. "I'm running a workshop," she said, "on accountability and rebuilding trust. I think you could help." He didn't respond immediately. "Only if it's okay that I don't pretend to be an example." She smiled faintly. "I don't want an example. I want the truth." That evening, Ethan stood in front of a small group, couples, individuals, people carrying stories heavy and unresolved. "I'm not here because I got it right," he said. "I'm here because I got it wrong," and chose not to run from that. He spoke of ego, of avoidance, of how betrayal rarely begins with cruelty, but with neglect. Lily watched from the back of the room, heart tight but warm. She saw people nodding, leaning in, seeing themselves. Afterward, a man approached Ethan. "Thank you," he said. "I thought admitting failure meant losing everything." Ethan shook his head. "Sometimes it's the only way to keep what matters." Lily caught his eye across the room. In that look was something new, not innocence, not certainty. Hope earned. One night, months after the dinner that shattered everything, Lily and Ethan returned to the Amber Room. Not for business, not for revenge, just dinner. The rain stayed away this time. The city lights shimmered the same, but the air felt lighter. "You don't have to do this," Ethan said softly as they were seated. "I know," Lily replied. "That's why I am." They ordered slowly, talked about books, about Ava's college acceptance, about nothing and everything. At one point, Lily reached across the table and took Ethan's hand. He froze, then relaxed when he realized it wasn't fragile anymore. "I don't regret staying," she said, "but I don't forget what it cost me. I'll spend my life honoring that," he said. She nodded. "That's all I ask. If you believe love can still win, even after it's been broken, comment amen below. Let's fill this space with hope. Someone scrolling right now might need to see that healing is possible. Later that night, they walked home instead of taking a car. The streets were quiet. The city breathed around them. Ethan stopped suddenly. "Can I ask you something?" She smiled softly. "You already did. A long time ago." He swallowed. "Do you trust me?" She didn't answer immediately. "Yes," she said finally. Not blindly, not easily, but intentionally. Emotion rose in his chest. Not explosive, but steady. "That's more than I deserve," he said. She squeezed his hand. Deserve has nothing to do with it anymore. At home, Lily paused at the bedroom door, the same one that once felt like a dividing line. She turned to him. "Tomorrow isn't promised," she said. "But tonight we're here." He nodded, eyes shining. Together, they stepped inside, not into a perfect future, but into one they were willing to build honestly. Outside, the city lights flickered, unaware that something quiet and powerful had just chosen to survive. Morning arrived gently, like it had learned to knock. Soft light spilled through the curtains, warming the edges of the room. Lily lay awake before Ethan, listening to his steady breathing. For the first time in a long while, her chest didn't feel tight with vigilance. It felt open, not careless, just open enough. She turned her head and studied him. The lines at the corners of his eyes, the quiet vulnerability of sleep. This was the man who had broken her trust, and also the man who had stayed when staying was uncomfortable. Both truths lived side by side now, no longer fighting for dominance. Ethan stirred and opened his eyes. When he saw her watching him, he smiled, not triumphant, not relieved, just grateful. "Morning," he whispered. "Morning," she replied. They didn't rush the day. Coffee brewed. Windows opened. The city hummed below, alive and ordinary. Ethan cooked breakfast while Lily leaned against the counter, telling him about a new counseling initiative she wanted to launch, one focused on emotional accountability, not just healing. "I want people to understand," she said, "that pain doesn't make you weak. Avoiding it does." He nodded. "I think a lot of people need to hear that." "So do I," she said, then smiled. "That's why I'm asking you to help me." He paused, spatula hovering. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said. "Not because you're perfect. Because you're honest about your imperfections." His eyes burned. He blinked it back. "Then I'm in. Completely." Months passed. Not in a montage of perfection, but in steady, meaningful steps. The initiative launched quietly, then grew. People came with stories, betrayals, regrets, second chances they weren't sure they deserved. Lily led with empathy. Ethan supported from the background, never centering himself, never hiding either. Their marriage didn't return to what it was. It became something stronger because it had been tested, broken, examined, and chosen again. One evening, as they closed up the center, Lily locked the door and turned to Ethan. "Do you ever wish none of it had happened?" she asked. He didn't lie. "I wish I hadn't hurt you." She nodded. "Me too." But, he added carefully, "I don't wish away who we became because of it." She considered that, then reached for his hand. "Neither do I." On the anniversary of the night at the restaurant, they did something different. They didn't mark it with sadness or silence. They volunteered. Side by side, they served meals at a shelter downtown. No names, no explanations. Just presence. Just service. A woman there thanked Lily quietly. "You listen like someone who's been through something." Lily smiled. "I have." Later, as they walked home beneath a sky full of unbothered stars, Ethan spoke softly. "You saved me," he said. She stopped and turned to him fully. "No, you chose to change. I just chose not to harden." He nodded, understanding the difference. Their story didn't end with certainty. It ended with commitment. To honesty. To accountability. To choosing love, not as a feeling, but as a daily act. And before we leave this story behind, let me ask you something, gently, sincerely. If this journey moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for entertainment, but for the person who carried betrayal and still chose kindness. One small click can be your way of saying, "I felt that." You weren't alone. Some stories aren't meant to teach us that people don't fail. They're meant to remind us that when they do, what matters most is what comes next. Love doesn't survive because it's unbreakable. It survives because someone decides it's worth rebuilding. And sometimes, that decision changes everything.